Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to the IBEN Insights podcast. I am your host, Cam Kravitz. We were really happy with the reception that we got for the first podcast that we released last month. It had a great reception on YouTube. We got way more views than we were expecting. So really happy with the reception and the general feedback that we've been receiving from all of you. So thank you to everybody that left a message either on LinkedIn or on YouTube, giving us some feedback and response to the first podcast. We're really happy with how it's been going so far. Feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're still trying to decide if we're going to publicly list our podcast moving forward. So that way, if you subscribe to the channel, you'll just get a notification and you'll see it there in your feed every month when the new podcast drops. But if you don't want to do that, you can also take a look in your IBEN Insider, which comes out usually the third Wednesday of every month, and you'll get the direct link to it there as well. So, housekeeping out of the way, on to our second podcast. So, today with us, I have Dr. Ann Grisham and Claudia Fayad. Am I saying that right, Claudia?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
beautiful, lovely. So first, Dr. Ann Grisham, she is an IBEN lead educator, site visitor, workshop leader, consultant, and field representative. And I'm probably leaving a few out, Ann, there as well. With a passion for empowering individuals and organizations to achieve their full potential, Ann Grisham is a seasoned educator with 35 plus years of experience in leadership training, building relationships, communication strategies, and pedagogical
Logical.
practices. Yes, there we go. That increases student achievement and engagement. Since 2007, she has been an active member of IBEN, including conducting interactive workshops, coaching leaders, and developing tailored learning solutions to address specific organizational needs. As a former principal and district leader of IB schools, she understands the challenges that schools face in today's world and is committed to staying at the forefront of best practices to provide relevant, impactful, and forward thinking guidance. And our friend Claudia Fayad, with 30 years of experience in international education and leadership in IB World Schools, Claudia supports educators and learning communities in designing meaningful, inquiry driven learning. For the past 15 years, she has been an active member of IBEN, leading professional learning workshops, supporting school authorization and evaluation processes, and collaborating with educators across the Americas to strengthen teaching and learning. Claudia currently serves as the Director of Early Childhood and Primary Education at Collegio Columbio Britannico in Cali, Colombia. Drawing on her experiences as a teacher, program coordinator, and a school leader, she works with educators and leaders to cultivate learner agency, strengthen collaborative professional cultures, and develop inclusive learning environments that prepare young people to thrive in an increasingly complex and interconnected world. Thank you both for joining me today. Very nice to see both of you, two long-time trainers, rather, with the IBEN team. I've never actually met either of you face to face, but I've seen your name now many times throughout the years as we complete our training. So maybe a lot of you listening here today have attended a training with either Anne or Claudia in the past. So it's great to have you both here. So that leads me into our topic today, reflective and relational intelligence. I know that this is a topic that you both have been studying for quite some time in preparing this topic for today. So I'd love to turn it over to you. I don't know who would like to explain what is reflective and relational intelligence. Who maybe wants to explain critical reflection? I know that that was maybe the first point we wanted to talk about, and the four C's. The to kind of lead into that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be happy to take that one, Cam. Thank you for that. So the four C's, it's really it's thinking about reflection on a continuous, connected, challenging, contextualized cycle. But as I started to critically reflect on this and really think deeper about, is it just that simple, or is it a little bit more complicated to that? And that really got me into thinking about things more of like a spider web and thinking about it's not as clean. In fact, sometimes my assumptions may get in the way of the context. And so if I'm not paying attention to context, the assumptions might be the wrong assumptions to make about a school or about people in a workshop or even an examination paper, right? And so really thinking about the context and then also thinking, oh, thank you, that helps.
There it is.
Also
Yeah.
thank you, that does help. Thinking about, the knowledge and the experience that I bring in, and is that getting in the way? Am I making assumptions based on that? And I'm not paying attention to the context. And so when you think about a web, it gets more and more complex the more inside or the deeper you get into the web. And it's not just this continuous thing. Things keep crossing
Right.
back and forth across it. And, there's challenges in the context, and there's challenges in the reflection piece, and there's challenges in the experience. And maybe my knowledge is not enough for this particular situation. Where do I go from here? So it's really thinking about, what do I know? How do I know? Almost a TOK kind of thing, really, when you think about it. And then and so now what? What do I do with that? So that's kind of
Yeah.
what critical reflection gets us to.
And that's one of the reasons why I really like the web. And I think in our IBEN roles, and it's this way on purpose, it's very structured, right? And we want to
Mhm.
keep it that way. There is a specific order to operations when we are in our IBEN roles. A team visit has to go a very certain way, an evaluation visit has to go a very certain way. Otherwise, it all kind of falls apart. But I think what the web does is it really opens up the possibility for us to change the way that we think about
Mhm.
going about these events, or you could even open it up to how we examine or mark exams, lead a workshop, because every single situation that we face is going to be a little bit different, right? Where,
Mhm.
for example, I know that for me and my own personal life, the order that I usually go in here, I start with the context, then I kind of go over to assumptions. It's just the most human nature aspect of this, isn't
Sure.
this, to just make assumptions. Then that instantly leads me into the challenges, and that's when I really go deeper into the web and I get that experience and I get that knowledge, and then finally I can kind of build some sort of reflection on it. So I think it is a really interesting idea for us to be able to deploy in our IBAN roles. So thank you for explaining that a little bit deeper. I'll keep the web up for a second. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else to that, Claudia, or maybe an anecdote on an event that you did, or maybe something along those lines. Anything in your IB experience that might go in line with your own web.
Oh, absolutely. What I would like to say, Cam, thanks, is that we relate this web to reflective intelligence in terms of this being an inward gaze. So this
Hmm.
is searching inside, and reflecting on all these elements that are at play in any one of our roles. And I think that ties beautifully into thinking of relational intelligence as that outward look, and how we use the iceberg in terms of relational leadership, because it is layered and is going to help us regardless of the role that we hold with
Hmm.
IBEN.
It's just so easy to be able to picture this anytime, because we all hold, or many of us in the network hold multiple different roles, right? So it can be hard to kind of take an experience from something you've done in one role and try and translate it to something in a completely different role, right? So I think you're right. This is a great sort of baseline to be able to take with us wherever we go in our IBIN journey. Does anybody else have anything on reflective intelligence before we maybe move on to the other piece of relational intelligence?
I think the thing that I would add here, Cam, is that reflection is ongoing, it's continuous. It's not just at the end of the site visit or the end of the workshop or after I've marked all the papers or after I've been a consultant. It's continuous. It's before I even get there. It's while I'm there. It's while I'm engaged in the event, and then it's afterwards. And so now what do I know? What would I change now? What I know. So I think that's really a key piece. It's not just an end piece.
That was really beautifully put. I think what I'm learning so far in just our brief time together, I would love to take a training with either one of you. I think that'd be a really fun time. I think I'd just become a much more holistic person afterwards. So thank you for explaining that concept to me, reflective intelligence. So now I want to talk about the other half of our topic today, which is relational leadership. We have another image for us here to help us to understand the concept. And I think Claudia, you might be able to explain a little bit more here what we're looking at and what this means for the listeners.
Sure, Cam. So the iceberg is a visual metaphor that is used often when we want to explore things that lie underneath and that are not so obvious, but that occupy a large portion and influence greatly what is seen above water. And this is crucial in our IBEN roles because the behaviors, whatever is above water, is what it's visible, what others can detect. But really, the wisdom and the integrity of our IBEN practice lies underneath. Um, and it is about understanding that right below the surface, the listening, the empathy, the perspective taking, these are essential skills. And our degree of development in those skills is going to have a direct influence on those visible behaviors that others detect in the different roles that we are performing for IBEN. But really, it's all actually about the deep foundations, the part that is submerged, which is really the largest portion of the iceberg. And this is where we bring our beliefs, our assumptions that you mentioned before. And these are our values and what we hold to be true when it comes to people and to learning. And this is really what drives everything that we do as leaders. And so behaviors do matter, but they are rooted in something deeper. And it should be our discipline to shed light into those depths so that we can make them conscious, sorry, and work with those instead of being unconsciously driven by them.
I think that's really beautifully put, and I think it really sums up what it means to be a leader in some ways, right? Where maybe opposed to being a listener, there is extra work that goes into it, right? There is
Absolutely.
that unseen part, if you're leading a workshop, if you're in front of a group of people, there's that extra work that goes into it that nobody else sees. It's under the water. It's that empathy, perspective, values, it's all the work that you have to do, but it's maybe not what you get credit for at the end of the day, but it is just as important as that 10% that actually does come out at the end, right? So I think that's a really interesting one as well to kind of go hand in hand with reflective intelligence as well. I think they do just mesh really well together. I'm not sure, Anne, if you had anything else to add on this bit as well. Before spoiler, we do actually go ahead and tie these two concepts together.
Yeah, I'm good with what we've got so far. Let's keep going.
Lovely, lovely. So then I think this is a great time to talk about dialogue-centered leadership. This is kind of the next aspect of this school of thought when it comes to leadership and thinking. It seems to build trust in relationship with all parties, with the goal of making sure that everyone in the room is valued. And we had a conversation about this beforehand, which was the webinar, regarding this topic. And the thought came into my head, and it also does tie back to this relational leadership and also the web that we were just discussing. There does have to be a little bit of a buy-in with not just you as the leader, but also the group that you're working with, right? They have to be receptive to these conversations and wanting to kind of interact and grow on a deeper value. What do you maybe do if somebody isn't quite ready for this sort of thinking in your group? Does there need to be some sort of mutual consent to try and deploy these methods, or are these things that you can do all the time regardless?
Well, I think that, dialogue, and that's true for me in any of the role that I have in IBEN and outside of IBEN as well, is it's really thinking about how how does that person feel seen and heard? And it's building that trust factor. And so, a school might present, we've got this situation, we're not able to work through it. It just is what it is. And you can say, well, okay, but I can come in and save the day and show you how to do this. The reality is, I probably just need to take a step back and really hear what they have to say. What is their context? What is their struggle? And then start to, piece by piece by piece, start to build on building that trust with them. And I think when schools feel like they're seen and heard, when teachers feel like they're seen and heard, school administrators, which that's my peeps, right? When they feel seen and heard, then I think you start to build that trust, and then you can start to build the foundation in order to help somebody grow. And I think that means that, and I've said earlier, check your own ego at the door and really listening to what somebody has to say. And then think about, okay, I'm coming into this with a preconceived notion. So, I teach the head of school workshop a lot of time. And so a head of school will say, well, how do I get teacher buy-in? That's a common question. Well, okay, so what have you done so far? Help me understand that piece. What do you think your next step might be? Help me understand that piece. What's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? Help me understand that piece. So instead of me rushing in to save the day,
Right.
it's let me ask more questions and help me understand what your context is, and let me put my own assumptions aside because your context is different than mine.
Right.
And so I think being seen, being heard, building that trust, and sometimes you only have a couple days in a workshop or a site visit, but you do what you can do so that people are more willing to engage with you.
Yeah, that can be the difficult part of IBEN, right? Is we do see kind of flashes of each other here and there in short bursts, and then we might not interact with each other for months,
Yeah.
in the future. But and I know this isn't a podcast or even a webinar, etc., anything of the sort on school leadership and administrators. But my fiance is an elementary school teacher, and I can tell you firsthand that having good, competent school administrators can go quite a long way. So thank you, Anne,
Absolutely.
for that shout out for
Yep.
school administrators. They are extremely important, and we love them when they do a good
Yeah.
job. So thank you for that. Okay. This is where our conclusion is today. Essentially, all of the concepts that we've just discussed with you, they all culminate in this sort of ladder to be able to help us bridge the thoughts and put them in another metaphor for us to be able to take with us from role to role and with us just in our own personal lives as well. So I'm not sure which one of you would like to explain what we're looking at here as well.
That's
I
Claudia.
can take that on, Camp.
Yeah.
Yes. So this ladder of inference was created by Chris Argyris, and then it was popularized by Peter Senge in the fifth discipline. This is about systems thinking, and it's a ladder with 7 rungs that explains how we human beings go very quickly from a reality that we're exposed to into interpretations, assumptions, conclusions, and then acting. This is something that is done quite quickly in seconds, unconsciously, automatically, every day. So going from the bottom to the top, first we have the reality, everything that is available to us to observe. But actually, we always take a slice and we notice just a part of it because it is prompted by our own background and experiences and who we are. And then we give meaning to that data, we interpret it. Mind you, it's just a slice and we're interpreting that slice. And because we we import our own context to it, that leads very quickly to assumptions. We we pass judgment, so we arrive to conclusions quickly as well. And then now we are equipped with a new belief, something that we now hold to be true, and we act on that. And this happens in seconds, and that's how we tend to arrive to conclusions very quickly about what we see. The invitation is to climb that ladder back down so that we keep ourselves in check, so that we are humble and true in our approach and in appreciative inquiry, regardless of the reality we're facing as IBEN.
So here's a question for you. This might just be the difference of the metaphor that we talked about here versus the web, or maybe just because that's how my brain initially sees it. So is there a difference between jumping around the ladder in that there are kind of steps to go through versus the web, where you can go kind of in any which direction, right? Or is there a bit more of an order of operations here? Because I understand what you're saying, right? Where jumping from what I believe down to what the reality ends up being, that could be the truth one time, whereas another time it might be the opposite, right?
And what we think is that the latter helps us marry what the reflective intelligence brings to us and to our roles with what relational intelligence does. And this goes through the realization that everybody's climbing their own ladder. So it's not just a matter of keeping myself in check, but really being open and on the lookout for the ladder that the other one is climbing. And all this is negotiated through dialogue, which is harder than we think because there are all these traps, the confirmation trap or the prestige trap, or we divide our attention. As you said before, is not easy. But for us, the latter is what helps us put together that inward look, which would be the reflective, with the outward one, which would be the relational. I don't know if
Right.
Anne wants to add anything.
Yeah, I think that was perfectly said, Claudia, because, the spider is more just on the reflective side, although it has bits and pieces, does it not, of the relational piece. But I think this helps us think in a more formalized way, more of a sequential kind of way, I think. And I think the key here is that, yes, we climb the ladder, but we need to climb back down that ladder to really get to, our beliefs and conclusions and assumptions. Really, let's bring that down into what is the reality here, in this situation. So I think that's the key piece, is that we can climb the ladder all day, but we need to climb it back down.
Right,
And
right.
that helps
It's
us check it
sometimes
through.
multiple times a day, right? Different
Yeah.
tasks we're doing,
Yeah.
different events that we're doing, different roles
Mhm.
that we're performing for IBEN. You can do this with really any given task. I think it is a perfect metaphor. All three of the metaphors we talked about, I think, are really easy to remember and easy to digest for everybody who's listening, to take them into their own personal lives and their roles, just even outside of IBEN as well. I think that's one of my favorite parts about these podcasts, is I learn a lot, to be able to take this with me as well in the future, because I don't have an IBEN role. I am an IBEN staff, but they are still all concepts that are easily transferable to our everyday lives. So I think that is a fantastic way to wrap it up. I'm not sure if either of you had any more notes to add on to this topic. I think, yeah.
I guess just being aware of the fact that they both interact and have an influence on whatever we do. So the way we think shapes the way we relate, and the relationships that we build also shape our thinking. And being aware
Yeah.
of that and exploring it with humility and through openness is key to what we do.
That,
I
yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead, Anne.
Claudia, the humility piece, I'm glad you brought that up, because it really is, we are in a role, every single role that we have in IBEN is really that of the servant role. We are there to help teachers, help schools, help administrators, help systems that are using IB to become better, to continue on their journey. And we have to approach it in a humble way. So I appreciate that,
Yeah.
Claudia, from you.
I'm gonna let both of your words be the final stroke on this topic, because I think you both just wrapped it up beautifully, and talking about service there. That is, of course, our ultimate goal here as an IBEN team. So Thank you both so much for joining me today. This has been a real pleasure for me. I hope you guys enjoyed being here as well. I want to thank all of the listeners who are listening in today for checking us out. Hopefully, you are enjoying what you're listening to. Feel free to leave us a comment on, any of the LinkedIn posts. Leave us a comment here on the YouTube video, or just email us at iben@ibo.org and let us know what you're thinking. And if there's anything that you'd want to see changed in the future. I think that this has been a lot of fun so far here in our second podcast. So thank you, Anne, and thank you, Claudia, once again so much for joining me today. And we will see everybody next month.